everyone, welcome. I'm Denise from GRIN, and you might also know me as Brett's mom. And on behalf of Keith and the rest of the GRIN board members, we want to welcome you to this year's conference. We're supposed to be in Boston today, but as we know, we are doing a virtual event, but it's so nice to see so many people in the GRIN community join us today. We have a great day of sessions planned for you. We are lucky to have so many great researchers on our strategic advisory board, including Dr. Amy Ramsey. Dr. Ramsey is a pharmacology researcher at the University of Toronto. She developed a mouse model with genetic deficiency in the NMDA receptors caused by a mutation in the GRIN1 gene. And since the creation of the mice a few years ago, Dr. Amy has studied the physiological and behavioral consequences of GRIN1 loss of function. It's actually probably more than 20 years ago, not a few years ago. She began working with the GRIN families around the world in 2018 to discover treatments for patients using the mice that carry the disease-causing mutation in the GRIN1 gene, and showing that these GRIN symptoms can be reversed in rescue mouse models. Dr. Amy Ramsey's research gives us so much hope for our loved ones today. And we're so excited that her lab and her team have recently been granted a government grant worth 868,000 Canadian dollars to investigate treatments for GRIN disorders. So great news for our whole community. And on top of all the great work, Dr. Ramsey is also so patient-focused and collaborative. And so it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Amy Ramsey.
Thanks so much, Denise. It's really a thrill to be here. And we've come so far in just 2 years. It's really amazing to me, and I'm so excited to be here representing all of the GRIN researchers, welcoming you all and serving as kind of the representative for all of the people around the world who have been studying NMDA receptors for all of their scientific career, and all of our work has really been re-energized by working with you families and understanding how important and relevant our research is to real families, real people. So I want to say thank you for all of the efforts that you have done as parents to bring all of the researchers together. I think that this is how the research is going to really move forward. I'm excited to hear from the other researchers and hear about what you've been working on for the past year. It seems like 10 years have passed since we were all together in Atlanta last year. I can't believe it's only been a year, to be honest. And in some ways, the pandemic has slowed research, but in other ways, I think about how much has happened just since we met in Atlanta last year. So, GRIN has achieved this amazing accomplishment of getting the Chan Zuckerberg initiative funding. And I know that you all are going to be talking more about that, but this is an enormous stride for GRIN research. The other things that have happened, I think there's been several mouse models that did not exist a year ago that are now in people's colonies, and they're doing research. So we're really discovering a lot. We're still in the early days, so I don't know how much we'll actually hear about those mice today, but we have many new mouse models, and that's important because it's critical for us to understand what's happening in the brains and also in the bodies of patients with GRIN. We first study the mice because they're really similar in a lot of ways, right? And at the same time, we have growing induced pluripotent stem cells. So these are these are a type of cell where you collect cells from patients or from their parents, and then you convert those skin cells or blood cells into cells that can become neurons, or even can become little mini brains. And so we can learn a lot about that individual patient and their individual variant by studying these cells that we call iPSC cells. So many families have participated in donating their cells to groups in Canada, in the United States, in Europe, and I think that this has all happened. A lot of this has happened just in the past year. Beyond this, there's been exciting developments about new drug therapies. There have been exciting developments about understanding consequences of variants that have happened. Trying to think of all of the different publications that have gone out, and there's also been an exciting report about the fact that when patients take L-serine, it gets converted into D-serine in the brain. And so it really supports the idea that L-serine could be used as a nutritional supplement. So I don't want to go over my time, but I just wanted to say that I think that there's been really tremendous progress just in the past year. I'm very excited to hear what's going to happen. And also I wanted to encourage parents who might be thinking about getting involved in research. I just want to empower you to reach out to local scientists if you have them, and bring them into the fold. They can help you to, to translate some of the scientific literature that gets published. They can help to put this into words that you can understand. And you know, not everyone speaks English in the GRIN community. And so, you know, researchers can say this in your native tongue and in a way that makes sense to you. So I really encourage you in your country to reach out to the research institutions that have scientists working on NMDA receptors. And I really believe that they can help you to understand some of this scientific literature that's coming out. I also think that you play a really important role in moving things forward. I've been working with mice for 20 years, and I have learned so much in the past 2 years from talking to parents that I'm seeing these mice in a whole new way. It's really changed the direction of my research. So I think it's beneficial on both sides. It benefits the researchers to talk to the parents, and it benefits the parents to talk to the researchers so that they can help translate some of these technical jargon that won't make sense to people who don't study NMDA receptors for a living. So I'll end there. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint here. Great. Here. And now I get the honor of telling you a little bit about Cure GRIN. Our mission is to find cures and therapies for people around the world living with GRIN disorder. Our board of directors are made up of parents with children with GRIN disorder and variants including GRIN 1, 2A, GRIN 2B, and GRIN 2D. And our board members are located across North America and Europe as well. You'll be hearing from several of us today throughout the sessions. And we also have the honor of working with a couple of our Rare as One team members from the Rare as One grant program. Dr. Angie Serrano is our science advisor, and Megan Collins is the research coordinator. We formed Cure GRIN just over a year ago, And in this short amount of time, with the help of the GRIN community, including collaboration from our sister organization, GRIN 2B Foundation, and other GRIN groups, we've been able to grow the GRIN community. Like Amy mentioned, we were fortunate enough to have received the Chan Zuckerberg Rare as One grant. And this grant allows us to connect with hundreds of researchers and clinicians around the world. It's allowed us to recruit and hire our amazing research coordinator, Megan Collins. It's allowed us also to leverage the learning from the other rare diseases organizations that are a part of this cohort, and also engage in capacity building to grow and mature the CureGRIN Foundation. In last March, we launched the first GRIN Disorder Awareness Month. We collaborated with the GRIN 2B Foundation as well as the other GRIN groups as well to create this month of awareness that highlighted all the GRIN genes. We were recently awarded the Global Genes Rare Patient Impact Grant, which allowed us to provide funding to some of the GRIN families that have been impacted by the COVID-19. And last month, we launched our first virtual challenge, the Get Moving for GRIN. And it was so great to see the whole GRIN community come together and participate in this distance challenge that lasted the whole month of August. And it was so great to see the enthusiasm around this event. So thank you for everybody who participated and supported and shared our post. And now I'd like to hand it over to CureGRIN CEO, Keith McArthur, who's going to provide an overview of the status of GRIN research.
Thanks, Denise. It's so great to be here. And I'm just looking at the chat and seeing people sign in from countries around the world. I said in the chat that we're the United Nations of GRIN. So it's so great to see so many of you here today. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we're investing the funds that you raise to try to get to cures and therapies for GRIN disorder. So to date, we've raised about $195,000 directly through CureGRIN, plus about $40,000 Canadian, which is 30,000 US, through the University of Toronto, where Amy works, and we also have Dr. Graham Collingridge. So two of the Amy is one of the top GRIN researchers in the world, and Graham is one of the top researchers on NMDA receptors, and has done some really pioneering work there. And we've also got a $465,000 grant, as Denise mentioned, from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. So our initial priority was to invest in what we call foundational research. So things like animal models and registries, so registries for patients to learn more about their symptoms, but also registries of variants. So to look at all of the different protein changes and to do work to figure out if people have a gain of function or loss of function. And I know that for many of you who have joined, gotten a new diagnosis and joined the community, the first piece of advice you will often get from other parents is to try to find out if your child has a gain of function variant or a loss of function variant. And we have a whole session later today just about what the differences are there. But that's such an important piece. And we heard that Dr. Stephen Trinelis, who does one of the two researchers really leading this work about functional analysis and detecting gain of functions or loss of functions, he told us that his funds were running out. And we felt that this was so important for families that we are excited to announce that we've awarded a $75,000 grant thanks to your fundraising efforts to do 50 functional analyses at Steve Trinelis' lab. So that'll help some families that have been waiting for their analysis and some new families that are getting new diagnoses to be able to get those analyses done. You can move on, Denise. So thanks to you all for helping us to raise that money. I wanted to talk a little bit about our roadmap for funding. So we've raised, we set a goal to raise $3 million over 5 years to raise money at CureGRIN. And so I want to tell you our strategy of how we think we can best leverage this money going forward. So I'm going to describe something that's becoming known as the Feigenbaum model. So Dr. Feigenbaum is someone who had a rare and fatal disease that he discovered shortly after, or maybe even while he was still in medical school, and then basically devoted his life to finding a cure for his own disease, and he successfully did it. And then he went on to do a lot of research about what he thinks is right and wrong about the traditional way that parent foundations like us invest our funds. So the traditional model would be that organizations go out and fundraise, then ask researchers, sort of open a request for proposals, ask researchers to come back to them with ideas for how those funds should be spent, and then kind of make an evaluation on which projects sound the most worthwhile and hand out the grants that way. Dr. Feigenbaum's model, which is also a model recommended by the Chan Zuckerberg Institute, kind of turns that on its head. And basically, their advice is that we really have to start by assessing what the research priorities should be. So that involves consulting with families, researchers, and clinicians to identify the priorities, fundraising, and then recruiting the best researchers to help answer the top questions that we've identified, the top research priorities. So you can go ahead, Denise, please.
Hold on, it's not advancing. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Is that it?
Okay, yeah.
No,
So,
okay.
so this is what the model sort of looks like. So we're starting right now. Dr. Angie Serrano and Megan Collins are doing a research review. So they're basically looking at all of the research that's been published on GRIN and NMDA receptors, as well as the research that we know of that's in progress, and a list of all of the labs that are working on projects right now. And after we have kind of that this will be the first step of identifying priorities. Then we're going to go and consult with parents, researchers, and clinicians. So with parents, we are soon going to be sending out a survey to get your thoughts on what the top priorities should be. So we want to know, I think every parent might have a different answer, but we want to know what are the most important things. So, you can think of kind of obviously at the most optimistic end, something that will allow our children to become neurotypical, and to, those that can't walk or talk to be able to do those things, to be able to really be independent. But, on the way there's also a lot of specific symptoms that, we want to address for our kids. And these are things like epilepsy or mobility or vision impairment. And so it's really important as part of this process of how we're handing out the funds that you're helping us to raise, is to really know what those priorities are for you. So we'll be doing surveys, and then we'll be doing focus groups. With researchers, we have a great scientific advisory board, including Dr. Amy Ramsey, and we have clinicians on that as well. But we are also starting a monthly process of bringing our scientific advisory board, as well as other researchers and clinicians from around the world, together to meet once a month for an hour and a half, and to talk about what they're doing, and to help us get to a point where we can identify, based on the audit and what everybody's doing, they can help weigh into what they think are the top gaps are in our knowledge of GRIN, and some of the key questions that we need to answer. So we'll take all of that feedback from parents, researchers, and clinicians, and make a draft of what we think the top priorities will be, and then we'll share that again with all of our stakeholders. We'll incorporate the feedback from stakeholders into a final document. And our hope, if COVID doesn't slow down our timeline too much, is to be able to present that final document at the end of next April, when we are still hoping to meet up in Boston. And then the final step will be to, once we have that list of prioritized research questions, is to go out and find the best researcher for each question. So that might involve, it might be somebody who's already involved in GRIN. It could be someone who has a specialized expertise in one particular area to answer a question that hasn't worked on GRIN yet. It could be that we don't know who the best people are, or there's several best people, and then we might launch a very targeted request for proposals. But our plan is not to do, as I said, the kind of traditional way of going out and getting proposals for as many researchers as possible, because we want to be very strategic and really patient and parent focused in how we determine our priorities. Next slide, please, Denise. Okay, so a couple of things that I wanted to mention. So many of you may know that we are planning to publish a book this holiday season called Stories of GRIN. And basically this is stories written by parents. Amy, it could also be stories written by researchers. But basically we're looking for personal stories about the impact that GRIN has had on your life. And we've had a lot of great submissions already. Our deadline was intended to be yesterday, but we still don't have enough to put a full book together. So we've extended our deadline until the end of this month, so September 30th, and really encourage you to, if you have something that you've written already, to send it in. If you don't have anything yet, take time to write something about your child or your personal experience. And this is something that we are going to use as a fundraiser, and it's also something that we think will really help raise awareness of GRIN disorder. It's something that we would love to have, like next time we have our conference, we want to be able to give this book to all of our speakers. And so there's kind of lots of things that can go along with it. We think it will make a great family gift for GRIN relatives. So please think about submitting a story for that by the end of this month.
She's the conference coordinator, Clive.
I think there's someone that needs to mute here. There's someone, maybe it's Clarissa or Denise. I'm sorry, I just wanted to interrupt you.
Yeah, I can hear that too.
Because there's a lot of feedback.
Yeah. Clarissa, is that yours?
No, I'm on mute, but I've put Denise on mute. I think it might have been her.
No,
Okay.
I think you're not on mute because I can see your speaker.
Oh, well, I've just unmuted for just this moment.
Okay.
Yeah. It might be a participant.
So one more thing that I wanted to talk about. So Denise mentioned last year our Rare as One program, which, our Count Me GRIN program to raise funds for GRIN disorder research. So we've set a goal to raise $3 million over 5 years, as I mentioned. And the grant that we've received from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative goes a long way. It can do so much for us. But there's a restriction on that grant that we can't actually use it to fund research. So it can fund a lot of things that can help us. So we can hire people that will help us to promote researchers and connect with researchers and build out our database of researchers. And so there's all kinds of great things that come with that. But we really need to keep being active and raising as much money as we can to meet that goal and to do all of the things that I had talked about in terms of our long-term plan. When we are ready to go out and find the right researchers, we want to have the money to be able to invest on your behalf to answer these key questions that will help us get to cures and therapies as quickly as possible. And we are having, we're concerned this year about how COVID is affecting our fundraising efforts. We had planned to start doing in-person events this year as a big part of our income, like galas and golf tournaments and that kind of thing. And we haven't been able to do that. So we're really hoping that you can sign up to be a GRIN champion. So we're doing this program again in November. Last year, we set a goal of having 100 families sign up to commit to fundraise $2,500 from their families and friends. And last year, we had about 35 people who really focused on that and helped us to raise a lot of money. Some people raised more than $10,000. This year, it's really important that we get over 100 families that can try to raise $2,500 each. And if you sign up and you're not able to reach that goal, that's okay. Every dollar counts, but as many families as possible, we'd love to see you sign up when registration goes live in a few weeks to be a GRIN champion. Okay, so last couple of things. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what the format is going to be like today. So we have different kinds of sessions today. So if you look at your screen, over on the left, you'll see one button that says Main Stage. So the first half of the conference will all be taking place here on the main stage. So for the next, basically the first half of the conference will take place here. But then later on today, we're going to be breaking into 3 tracks of breakout sessions. So to access sessions such as gene therapy, sessions about keto, sessions about the NMDA receptor, click on the sessions button that you'll see just below the main stage. And we also have several sessions that are more interactive, casual discussions. And those ones will not be recorded, but there's one session that is a Spanish language session. There's one that is a Portuguese language session. And then we have 2 different sessions that are targeted toward GRIN siblings. So these are places where there's 2. There's one for kids under 12 and under, basically a safe space where they can go and talk to other siblings who have been there before. My son Connor will be there, as well as a couple of other people to help facilitate the discussion, and they'll start off by sharing their own stories. Then there's another similar session for teenagers and adults. So really encourage you to invite your parents or parents to think about inviting your children to that. Sorry. So yeah, so just want to also mention that I see there's lots of great discussion in the chat. There's also a Q&A button in there. So that's a place where you can leave a question and we'll try to answer them either in the session or at the end of the day when we have a Q&A. We'll be flagging some questions and putting them there. I see there's already a question there that we can try to add to that Q&A session at the end of the day. So it's 10:20. Well, it's 29 minutes after. I guess everybody's in a different time zone, but we are right on time. And so it's time to move to our next session, which is called Growing Up GRIN. And Denise is going to be the moderator of that. But I'm really excited about this one because this panel, we have a GRIN patient, a GRIN sibling, and a GRIN parent who are all going to share their stories. So see you there.
Thank you.